Sasquatch in Alberta, Bigfoot in Wild Rose Country by Thomas Steenburg. Foreword by Vladimir Markotic. I have been interested in the Sasquatch problem for a long time. I have a degree in anthropology, and an interest in primates come naturally to me. In my opinion, there is nothing impossible about the Sasquatch. The descriptions fit well with studies of the anomalies of apes and men. The only extraordinary thing about them is that they are so tall, but their tallness corresponds well with the supposed casts of their feet, which are larger than those of apes and humans. I do not believe that a Sasquatch could be 10 feet tall, and the height of 14 feet is out of the question. Judging the heights of unknown objects and beings is a very tricky thing. The most amazing case of wrong perception involved the pygmies in Central Africa who lived in the forest. When a pygmy was brought out of his natural habitat into the treeless plains and saw buffalo grazing several miles away, he asked, "What insects are those?" because he had no sense of distance. Living in the jungle, pygmies are used to distances which extend only to the next tree. Colin M. Turnbull, The Forest People, page 263. Even more difficult is to judge objects when they are not on the same level as the viewer, but are higher or lower. We experience this when we drive to and through the Rocky Mountains. We see trees that we know are tall, but look like small toys. Vladimir Markotic was a Polish officer who escaped from a Siberian prison camp during the last war and crossed the Himalayas on the way to India. There, he saw two Yeti, a creature somehow related to the Sasquatch. He wrote, "I set myself to estimate their height on the basis of my military training for artillery observation. Their heights, according to him, should not have been much less than 8 feet. Vladimir Markotic, The Long Walk, page 228. I mention these facts to explain why there are some discrepancies or variations when people describe the size of Sasquatches. These variations are due to different perceptions, different cultural backgrounds of the viewers, whether they observe in the daylight or at night, etc. But on the whole, the Sasquatch, as he emerges from all these reports, is a pretty uniform being. He is between 6 and 8 feet tall, hairy except on the face and palms, and has even length of teeth, human-like feet, where the first toe is not separated from the other parts of the foot as among the apes. He walks straight on 2 feet only. This last characteristic, with the anatomical similarities of his feet to the human and the evenness of his teeth, makes it possible to classify him even more precisely as a hominid. The uniformity of anatomical details about the Sasquatch make me think this is not impossible for Sasquatches to exist. As a matter of fact, I would be surprised if they didn't. They appear as straight biological entities and not as some strange, misunderstood phenomena. Thus, the possibilities of the Sasquatch can be treated statistically and scientifically. Tom Steenburg does so by giving at least 2 sides of each case he presents. He also investigates each case himself and talks to as many witnesses as he can find. He checks and rechecks and investigates the story from all possible angles. This book may bring surprises to those of you who do not know many things or stories about Sasquatch in Alberta, but not just in the mountainous regions of western British Columbia. Tom Steenburg is to be commended to have put these stories from Alberta together, and I recommended this book to anyone interested in Sasquatch. Vladimir Markotic. As I continue on with the reading of this book, it does refer to Native and Indigenous peoples as Indians, so I will be self-correcting as I continue through. Please forgive me for any hiccups that might occur along the way. Introduction. Was it merely an indigenous legend told to early explorers, a story characteristics of the natives' mythical culture, or were the stories of giant, hairy man-like apes actual reports of an animal that has managed to mystify its researchers and elude Western civilization for nearly 300 years? While the European pioneer traveled across the continent of North America, he was entertained by its colorful natives and their flashy heroic tales of this elusive man-like beast. The names for this animal were as varied as the tribes of the Northern American indigenous peoples themselves. Sasquatch, English pronunciation, was only one such name. The same cultural differences that had entertained the settler, however, were to become part of the settler's intolerance of the indigenous ways. When the native peoples refused to give up their stories, religious beliefs, and land and joined the white man's quote-unquote more civilized approach to life, their cultural structure was first desecrated and then destroyed. The indigenous people were eventually cast away onto reserved land, along with their traditions, lifestyles, and legends. Long after early explorers had laid claim to and secured their lands and cities, however, the descendants of the settlers began moving back to unpopulated territories to enjoy the beauty of the wild mountains and attempt to preserve what was left of the forests. It was then that the legend of Sasquatch was reborn. Campers, hunters, adventurers were returning home with incredible reports of one or more giant hair-covered like man-beasts, huge man-like footprints, and strange unidentified animal calls. Only this time, the civilized man would not hear. No such animal had ever been seen publicly or found by the scientific community. The Sasquatch became a joke, a myth, a money-making event, a mere speculation to all but a select few men whose determination to prove its existence would not be quenched. Several years ago, two such men grabbed the attention of the world with a film they had made of the elusive creature. Try as it might, the scientific community could find no evidence to excuse the film as a hoax or a setup. As legitimate explorers, researchers, and a few scientists joined in on the hunt to find the Sasquatch, the race for evidence was on, to prove the existence of and settle the Sasquatch mystery once and for all. John Green, a Canadian widely renowned for his research into this subject, proposed the theory that the Sasquatch is an ape, a great ape residing within but not exclusively to the North American continent. Professor Grover Krantz, an anthropologist from Washington State University, has, from his studies, come to the very same conclusion. From his records into fossil records, Professor Krantz has surmised that the Sasquatch could be a close descendant of the Gigantopithecus. These, however, are merely theories, and until the animal itself is proven to exist, all theories remain just theories. In today's enlightened society, man finds it quite easy to believe in the ghosts he can never see, the unscientific and possibly ludicrous ramblings of strange men with foreign beliefs, but has difficulty believing what his fellow man swears to have seen, touched, heard, or known. This type of objectivity regarding the Sasquatch, however, is not only necessary, but of extreme importance. In order to prove the animal is alive and is indeed an animal, no room can be left for frivolous acceptance. Such would hurt the progress of research and open the door to classifying Sasquatch with mythical creatures before proof can be found. There can be no exact number showing how often this animal has been seen, as it is quite possible that most sightings go unreported. Because the Sasquatch has been regarded as a silly myth for so long now, it is strongly believed that many witnesses will clam up to fend off negative publicity and ridicule. However, at the time of writing, 349 reported incidents have been brought to my attention. In the United States, there have been 57 reported sightings in Oregon, 98 reported sightings in Washington, and 66 reported sightings in Northern California. In Canada, there have been 105 reported sightings in British Columbia and 23 reported sightings in Alberta. According to the numbers in my files, the Sasquatch, if it indeed exists, seem to be dwelling in the forests, mountains, and coastal regions of western North America. The 23 reported sightings in Alberta is what this book will concentrate on. Who are these 23 people? What was it they saw? Why did they report it? Where exactly did the incident take place? And when did it happen? And finally, how do we know they actually saw what they claim to have seen? In Alberta, a small part of the public school curriculum deals with modern unproven monsters. The Ogopogo, the Loch Ness Monster, the Abominable Snowman, and the Sasquatch. The Sasquatch seems to be presented as a single monster with a boogeyman-type personality, and the sightings of such equalized with that of a vampire, werewolf, or a witch on a broomstick. The possibility of its existence as a rare yet unfounded animal, possibly harmless to the human race, has all but been excused. This attitude has helped to place the animal alongside fairy tale figures most children leave behind in their adulthood. Unfortunately, it has also led most adults to believe that there is no evidence of the animal and no serious research into the project. What man in his right mind would spend time researching Peter Pan, Cinderella, the Wicked Witch of the West, or, and especially, the Boogeyman? Common questions asked by people who discovered that serious research is taking place are, if it is in the mountains, why haven't I seen one? Why hasn't one been hit with a car? There are bear sightings reported and dealt with all the time. Why hasn't the Sasquatch been given the same treatment? One of the most common questions is, why hasn't the bones or remains of a dead Sasquatch been found? This is the toughest question to answer. However, finding a Sasquatch in the mountains or forests would be like looking for a needle in a haystack. If it is there, the chances of finding it are quite rare. Professor Grover Krantz estimated some years ago that there may be only about 200 Sasquatches living in the Pacific Northwest. The province of Alberta is larger than many countries. Much of it, however, is unpopulated mountain and forest terrain. Tourists, campers, and hunters do run into bears and other wildlife, but not every day. Using the bear as an example, we will examine the possibility of running into a Sasquatch in the wilderness. Manhunts, plane searches, war games, nature excursions, and full tours take place in the foothills and Rocky Mountains of Alberta regularly. During these times, bears are rarely sighted. The bear population of Alberta is quite high, yet a person who lives and travels through Alberta for 10 to 20 years may never see one unless they go to a zoo displaying the bears. If the Sasquatch does exist, it is obviously a rare animal who may avoid or fear human contact. If this be the case, then 23 reported incidents involving the Sasquatch is not an unbelievably high number. Of the sightings reported to me, each person involved was questioned extensively. If they had enough information to be convincing, an interview would be granted to get the facts and expose the fallacies. Many of these people have come forward in fear of exposure. They are convinced that they have seen a Sasquatch, but are tired or afraid of ridicule. This is their story.